Diver found a Trojan horse on the seafloor, but when it was opened, everyone turned pale. He had spent countless hours in the deep blue, chasing shadows of shipwrecks and the whispers of lost civilizations, but today felt different. The water shimmered with an unusual clarity, as if it had been waiting just for him. Ethan's heart thumped with excitement and a little nervousness, the kind that only came before a dive that promised something extraordinary. Ethan was not alone. The research vessel, Odyssey, rocked gently on the Mediterranean waves, carrying a small but highly skilled team. There was Clara, the marine archaeologist who could identify the smallest clue in a sunken ruin. Marco, the engineer who designed most of their underwater equipment. And two junior divers, eager but inexperienced, whose eyes reflected the thrill of the unknown. Together, they had explored dozens of underwater sites, but none had prepared them for what lay ahead. The dive plan was simple on paper: explore a newly mapped section of the seabed that had been left largely untouched by previous expeditions. Satellite images suggested strange formations beneath the waves, and there were rumors from local fishermen of unusual shapes that sometimes appeared and disappeared with the tides. Ethan had dismissed them at first as folklore, but curiosity had gotten the better of him. He believed the truth, no matter how strange, was worth finding. The team lowered themselves into the water one by one, the surface breaking into bubbles around them. Ethan sank into the cool blue, the sunlight above turning the water into shifting beams of gold and silver. Fish darted around him, curious but cautious, and the distant rumble of the ship above was muted, replaced by the soft hiss of his breathing and the occasional click of sonar equipment. For nearly an hour, the seabed was ordinary, covered in sand, patches of seaweed, and scattered rocks. There were hints of previous shipwrecks, small fragments of pottery, rusted nails, and barnacle-encrusted wood, but nothing extraordinary. Ethan's excitement began to fade into quiet frustration. Just as he considered signaling the team to return, something caught his eye. At first, it was just a shadow, a faint outline against the sandy floor. Ethan adjusted his mask, moving closer. His heart skipped a beat. There, partially buried in a layer of silt, was a structure, large, unmistakable, and completely out of place. It was shaped like a horse, a massive horse, standing tall even beneath the water. The wood was darkened with age, covered in layers of algae, coral, and tiny barnacles, but the shape was undeniable. It was as if someone had carved a Trojan horse and left it here, hidden beneath the waves for centuries. Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he reached out, brushing away the sand to reveal more of the figure. The head of the horse had an eerie lifelike quality, its eye sockets hollow yet somehow expressive, staring silently into the water. The tail was intact, though worn, and the legs were sturdy, sunk partially into the seabed as though frozen in motion. He signaled to Clara, who quickly swam over, her eyes widening behind her mask. This shouldn't exist," she whispered, her voice crackling slightly through the radio. "I've studied thousands of ancient shipwrecks and artifacts, and I've never seen anything like this underwater, not even close." Marco appeared moments later, examining the horse with a scanner. "It's definitely wood," he said, "but the density, it's heavier than it should be. This could be some kind of reinforced structure. Maybe it's not just decorative." Ethan's mind raced. Could this really be what it looked like? A real-life Trojan horse lost to history, somehow preserved beneath the sea? Or was it something else entirely, a modern replica, a prank, or an art project gone astray? The deeper they examined it, the more questions arose. The wood seemed too intact to have been submerged for thousands of years, yet the growth of marine life suggested it had been there for decades, at least. The team decided to explore further before touching or moving it. Ethan circled the horse, careful not to disturb the silt too much. He noticed faint markings carved into the legs and body, lines and symbols that were almost worn away but still visible. Clara snapped pictures with her underwater camera, her hands shaking with excitement. "These symbols, they don't match any known culture from this region," she said. "Whatever this is, it's unique. Whoever made it, they wanted it to survive underwater." As they continued their inspection, Ethan realized that the horse seemed almost alive. Not literally, of course, but there was a presence about it, a sense of history and purpose that went beyond the wood and coral. It was as if the object itself was waiting for someone to find it, calling out across time and water. The divers gathered around it, discussing how they could bring it to the surface safely. Marco explained that they would need special lifting equipment to avoid damaging it, as the wood, though solid, could crumble under pressure if not handled carefully. The team began to plan the extraction, aware that they were standing on the brink of one of the most significant discoveries of their careers. Back on the research vessel, the atmosphere was electric. The crew prepared the winches, inflatable lifting bags, and submersibles for the operation. News of the find had not yet spread. Ethan wanted to verify everything first. But he could sense that the moment they brought the horse up, the world would pay attention. As the team worked underwater, Ethan couldn't shake a feeling of awe mixed with unease. He had explored countless shipwrecks and sunken cities, but something about this horse was different. It wasn't just an artifact. It felt like a message from the past, carefully hidden, waiting to reveal its secrets. And deep down, Ethan had a nagging sense that whatever lay inside would change everything they thought they knew about history. The sun climbed higher, casting shimmering patterns through the water, and the divers continued their careful inspection. Each stroke of their fins, each bubble rising toward the surface, felt like part of a slow, deliberate dance. The horse lay quietly, half buried in sand, watching silently as the modern world prepared to uncover its secrets. Finally, after hours of study and discussion, Ethan signaled that they were ready. The team attached the lifting straps, checking each connection twice. Marco gave the final nod, and the submersible began the slow ascent, bringing the horse closer to the surface. As it rose, the sunlight caught on the layers of coral and algae, making the horse glimmer as if it were enchanted. Back on deck, the crew held their breath. The horse broke the surface, its massive form now fully visible, dripping seawater, barnacles, and mystery. Cameras rolled, notes were taken, and the team could hardly believe what they were seeing. The moment they had dreamed of, the discovery of a lifetime, had arrived. Yet even as the excitement surged, Ethan felt a shiver of uncertainty. He had a sense that the horse's secrets were far more profound than anyone could imagine. They had uncovered it, yes, but what it contained, that was still hidden, waiting for the world to see. And he knew, deep down, that when that moment came, no one would be prepared for what they were about to find. The massive wooden horse rested on the deck of the Odyssey, dripping with seawater, algae, and the secrets of centuries. The crew stood around it, each person staring in awe and disbelief. It was bigger than anyone had imagined, towering over them even in the confined space of the ship. Ethan wiped his hands on a towel, his mind racing with possibilities. How had it survived underwater for so long? And more importantly, what could be inside? Clara approached the horse cautiously, her fingers tracing the carvings along its legs and torso. The symbols were faint but intricate, some resembling letters, others like abstract patterns, perhaps from a culture that had been forgotten by history. "These carvings are sophisticated," she murmured. "Someone didn't just build this to float. There's meaning here, a purpose we don't understand yet." Marco, already inspecting the lifting straps and equipment, spoke up. "We need to stabilize it before we even think of opening it. The wood is old but surprisingly strong. Still, if we rush this, we could destroy whatever is inside, and I don't want to be responsible for that." Ethan nodded. "Agreed, we'll take every precaution, but we can't ignore the fact that this might be the most important discovery of our careers, or even of this century." The crew worked carefully, wrapping the horse in protective tarps and padding to prevent damage. The news of the find hadn't yet reached the mainland, but whispers on the radio and through satellite links hinted that it wouldn't stay a secret for long. The Odyssey was now a floating laboratory, a safe harbor for one of history's most mysterious artifacts. That evening, as the sun set and painted the sky with shades of orange and purple, Ethan and Clara sat on the deck, discussing their next steps. "It almost feels alive," Clara said softly, her gaze fixed on the horse. "Not in a literal sense, but as if it's waiting for us to understand it. I can't shake the feeling that someone meant for us to find it." Ethan shivered, though not from the cool breeze. "I feel it too. Every time I look at it, it's like it's communicating in a language we don't yet know. And I can't help but wonder what would happen if we opened it." The question hung in the air, heavy with anticipation. No one had dared to open the horse yet. The possibilities were endless: ancient treasure, artifacts, historical records, but also something unexpected, something that could change everything they thought they knew. The next morning, the crew prepared for the first detailed examination. Specialists had arrived via helicopter, Archaeologists, conservators, and forensic experts, each eager to see the legendary find. Cameras were set up to document every step, and journalists were allowed to observe from a safe distance. The scene was chaotic, yet everyone moved with careful precision. Ethan, Clara, and Marco led the operation. They had decided to use a series of pulleys and supports to gently lift the horse slightly off the deck, giving them access to its base. Underwater photographs had shown no obvious openings, no hinges or doors, but the carvings suggested that some mechanism might exist. Hours passed as the team studied the horse, tapping lightly, measuring every dimension and scanning with sonar and infrared equipment. The scans revealed hollow spaces within, confirming that the structure was not solid wood, but contained internal compartments. Excitement surged through the crew. Whatever was inside had survived the sea for decades, or perhaps centuries, protected by the clever design of the horse itself. Clara studied the carvings again, tracing her fingers along the patterns. "I think these lines might be a kind of lock," she said. "Not a modern lock, but a combination of shapes. It could require pressure in certain spots to open." Marco adjusted his tools. "If that's the case, we need to be precise. One wrong move and we could damage the structure or worse, whatever is inside." Ethan felt a mixture of fear and excitement. This was not just archaeology, it was like a puzzle left by someone long gone, a challenge for the present. They worked carefully, documenting everything, ensuring that the horse was preserved in perfect condition before attempting to open it. As the day wore on, news outlets picked up on the discovery. Headlines began to appear on laptops, phones, and satellite broadcasts. "Mystery horse found under Mediterranean Sea," and "Trojan horse discovery stuns archaeologists." Public interest soared, and the world began to watch as the team prepared to uncover the secrets inside. By late afternoon, the horse had been lifted just enough to allow access to a small panel at the rear. It was subtle, almost invisible beneath the layers of growth and corrosion. Ethan knelt beside it, carefully brushing away the barnacles and algae. Clara held a magnifying glass, examining the faint lines that marked the edges. "Here," she said, "I think this is the starting point." The team paused, everyone holding their breath. Marco carefully inserted a specially designed tool to pry the panel open. The wood creaked slightly, groaning under centuries of pressure. And then, with a soft snap, the panel began to lift. A cold draft escaped from inside the horse, carrying with it the scent of old wood, salt, and something else, something faintly metallic. The team leaned closer, their eyes wide with anticipation. Through the opening, they could see faint shadows, shapes that had been hidden for decades. "What is it?" one of the junior divers whispered. Ethan shook his head. "We don't know yet. Be careful. No sudden movements." Slowly, carefully, the panel was removed, revealing a narrow interior space. The lighting inside the horse was dim, shadows dancing along the walls. At first, it looked like empty storage, but then details began to emerge. There were objects inside, arranged with careful precision. Clara leaned closer, her breath catching. These are not random items. Someone placed them deliberately." Ethan's mind raced. Could this be a message from the past, a collection of historical artifacts? Or something more personal, something intended to remain hidden until the right people found it? The team began to document everything, photographing and scanning each object without disturbing it. They found old tools, pottery fragments, and carefully wrapped bundles of material that had survived underwater for decades. Each item was a clue, a piece of a larger story that had been lost to time. As night fell, the crew worked under artificial lights, the horse glowing softly in the darkness. The initial excitement was now mixed with a profound respect for the craftsmanship and care that had gone into creating the horse. Whoever had built it had intended it to survive, and they had succeeded beyond expectation. Ethan stood back for a moment, taking in the scene. He felt a mixture of awe, responsibility, and an uneasy anticipation. The discovery was incredible, but it was also a reminder that history often held secrets that were meant to challenge and surprise us. Over the next few days, the team continued to explore the interior, carefully cataloging each item. The world watched, fascinated, as every new reveal added to the mystery. News stories speculated endlessly. Could this be linked to ancient myths, a secret society, or simply an elaborate burial or offering? Despite the excitement, Ethan couldn't shake a feeling of unease. The horse seemed to hold something more than artifacts. Its presence was commanding, almost intelligent, and he had the strange sense that opening it fully would reveal truths that might be difficult to accept. Clara noticed his expression and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Whatever we find, we'll face it together," she said. "We have the knowledge, the experience, and the tools to handle this. But yes, it's strange, almost as if it's alive in a way." Ethan nodded. "Exactly. That's what's unsettling. It's just wood, but it feels like so much more." The team made a plan for the next stage, to carefully expand the opening and examine the main chamber. They would proceed slowly, documenting everything, ensuring that every detail was preserved. They knew that this moment would be remembered in history, not just for what they found, but for how they approached it, with care, respect, and curiosity. As they prepared for the next step, the Mediterranean waves lapped gently against the hull of the Odyssey, and the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving the ship bathed in soft twilight. The horse lay at the center of the deck, silent and mysterious, holding its secrets in the shadows. No one could yet imagine what was inside, but all of them felt the same thrill, the knowledge that they were standing on the edge of a discovery that would change their understanding of history forever. And though they did not know it yet, the moment when the horse's full secret was revealed would leave everyone pale with shock, confronting truths no one had dared to imagine. The night grew quiet, save for the occasional creak of the ship and the soft murmurs of the crew. Each person reflected on the discovery, their minds alive with questions. The horse had emerged from the depths, bringing with it the promise of answers, but also the certainty that the story was far from over. And deep inside, Ethan felt it. The adventure had only just begun. The morning was calm, the Mediterranean waters reflecting the soft gold of the rising sun. On the deck of the Odyssey, the wooden horse sat in quiet majesty, its barnacle-encrusted surface glistening with seawater. The air was thick with anticipation. Everyone on board, scientists, divers, journalists, felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Today, they would uncover the full secret of the mysterious horse, a secret that had been hidden beneath the waves for decades, if not centuries. Ethan Marlowe stood at the side of the horse, checking the alignment of the lifting supports one last time. He had overseen countless dives and recoveries in his career, but nothing had prepared him for this. This horse was unlike anything he had ever seen. Its size alone was impressive, but it was the sense of purpose, the careful craftsmanship, and the meticulous internal compartments that made it extraordinary. Clara knelt beside him, her hands tracing the faint carvings along the horse's side. "I still can't get over these symbols," she said softly. "They're not just decorative. Whoever made this wanted it to survive and to communicate something. But what? And to whom?" Marco, already preparing his tools, gave a small nod. "All we can do now is be careful. One wrong move and we could destroy what's inside, or worse, disturb it in a way that's irreversible." Ethan took a deep breath and signaled the team to begin. Slowly, they started loosening the outer panels of the horse, revealing the internal structure piece by piece. Each panel was heavy and reinforced, requiring careful handling with pulleys and supports. The tension was palpable. Every creak of the wood sounded louder than it should, every movement seemed to echo across the deck. Finally, after hours of careful work, the first major chamber was exposed. The team held their breath. Inside, the horse was hollow, divided into multiple sections, each filled with objects carefully arranged as if by intention. The initial impression was of order and preservation. Everything was in its place, undisturbed by the years underwater. Clara leaned closer, examining the objects. "These aren't just artifacts," she whispered. "Someone took the time to arrange them. Look at how precise this is." At first, the contents seemed almost mundane. Old tools, bundles of cloth, fragments of pottery, and pieces of wood, each showing signs of age and water exposure. But as the team delved deeper, they noticed something that made their stomachs tighten. The shapes inside the horse were human. Not fully visible at first, but their forms, preserved and packed carefully, suggested that the horse was more than just a container. It was a vessel of people. Ethan swallowed hard. "Are these bodies?" he asked, his voice low. The team had prepared for discovery for historical artifacts, but this was something else entirely. The preservation was extraordinary. The figures seemed almost lifelike, their limbs arranged carefully as if frozen in time. Clara gasped, stepping back. "It's like a ritual," she said. Someone didn't just put them here randomly. They were arranged deliberately with intent. Marco shook his head, pale. This is incredible and terrifying. I've never seen anything like this. We need to document everything carefully before moving anything. The crew quickly set up cameras, scanners, and lights to capture every detail. Each object, each figure was recorded meticulously. The air on deck was heavy with tension. No one spoke except for the essential communications, as if breaking the silence too loudly might disturb the centuries of history resting within the horse. As the day wore on, the team continued to reveal more compartments. Each section seemed to follow a pattern, a hierarchy of placement. Some figures were smaller, carefully wrapped in cloth, while others were larger, lying side by side as if in repose. Between them, small objects, tools, personal items, symbols carved in miniature were placed deliberately. Whoever had built this horse had intended it to be more than a vessel. It was a story, a message frozen in time. The realization sent chills down Ethan's spine. This was not a simple burial or storage container. It was a deliberate act of preservation, a coded communication from the past. And the message, whatever it was, had waited patiently underwater, undisturbed, for someone to find it. Journalists leaned forward, cameras clicking and recording, but Ethan and Clara insisted on careful study before any public exposure. "We can't rush this," Clara said firmly. "We need to understand it first. Otherwise, we risk misrepresenting history." Hours turned into an entire day as the horse gradually yielded its secrets. And then, finally, they reached the largest compartment at the center, the heart of the horse. The air on deck grew heavier as the team prepared to open it. This was the moment of truth, the point where all speculation would end and reality would take its place. Ethan knelt beside the final panel, carefully prying it open with the precision tools Marco had designed. The wood groaned, and the faint metallic smell that had emanated from the horse intensified. Slowly, the panel shifted, revealing the chamber within. The scene inside was unlike anything anyone had expected. The figures, human in form, were arranged in a circle, their limbs interwoven, their heads bowed, as if in silent communion. Their clothing, remarkably preserved, suggested a combination of cultural influences, some familiar, others entirely unknown. Small objects placed carefully at their feet and hands seemed ceremonial tools, instruments, and items whose purpose was impossible to determine without further study. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. This is incredible," he whispered. "It's more than I could have imagined." Clara stepped closer, her eyes wide. "It's like they were frozen in a moment of ceremony. This wasn't just preservation, it was intentional. They wanted to be remembered. They wanted someone to find this." The team worked methodically, documenting every detail. They took photographs, recorded measurements, and scanned the chamber with infrared and sonar technology. Every object, every figure, every carving was captured, preserving the scene digitally before any movement was attempted. As they worked, a strange sense of presence seemed to fill the deck. The horse, already remarkable, seemed almost alive, as if it were aware of the attention it was receiving. The team felt a mix of awe and unease. The discovery was monumental, but the implications were staggering. This was not merely history, it was a message from the past, carefully encoded, demanding respect and attention. By evening, the main chamber had been fully documented. The team gathered to discuss their findings. Ethan leaned against the side of the horse, exhausted but exhilarated. "We've uncovered something extraordinary," he said, "but we're only beginning to understand it. The arrangement, the objects, the preservation, it's all intentional. Whoever did this, they wanted it to survive and they wanted it to be found. But why, and what does it mean?" Clara nodded. "I think we need to analyze the items, the textiles, the carvings. There's information here we haven't even begun to decode. And the arrangement, it might tell us about their culture, their beliefs, maybe even their last moments." Marco, usually pragmatic and focused on logistics, spoke quietly. "I've worked with a lot of historical artifacts, but this is different. We have to be very careful with what we do next. One mistake, and we could lose centuries of information." As the night fell over the Odyssey, the horse rested silently in the center of the deck. The Mediterranean was calm, its waves reflecting the moonlight as if paying tribute to the remarkable discovery. The team continued to work under artificial lights, documenting and discussing, trying to make sense of what they had found. Ethan wandered to the edge of the deck, looking out at the dark water. He felt a strange connection to the horse, as if it were a bridge between centuries, connecting the people of the past with those of the present. And deep inside, he had a growing sense of foreboding. The discovery was extraordinary, yes, but there was more here, something the horse had not yet revealed, something that would challenge their understanding of history and perhaps even their understanding of themselves. The crew, exhausted but driven, finally took a moment to rest. No one spoke much. The silence was filled with reverence for the discovery before them. They had uncovered a secret buried for decades, perhaps centuries, and they knew that what came next would change everything. As they slept under the stars, the horse sat quietly, holding its secrets close. And somewhere deep inside, its silent message awaited the world, a message that would leave everyone pale when fully understood. The morning after the final compartment of the wooden horse was opened, the deck of the Odyssey was alive with activity. Scientists, archaeologists, journalists, and even a few officials from cultural heritage organizations had gathered to witness the aftermath of the discovery. The massive horse, now partially stripped of its outer panels, revealed the carefully preserved human forms and artifacts inside. Everyone was aware that they were witnessing something far beyond ordinary history, a secret preserved for decades, possibly centuries. Ethan Marlowe paced the deck, the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. He had always known that finding such an artifact would change the course of their research, but he hadn't anticipated the emotional impact it would have on the team. The human forms, arranged in ritualistic positions, told a story that transcended words. They weren't just objects. They were people, each with a past, a purpose, and a final act carefully orchestrated to survive time itself. Clara approached him, her eyes still wide with a mixture of awe and unease. "We have to be careful," she said softly. "Every detail matters. One wrong word, one wrong interpretation, and we could misrepresent their story. These people, they trusted history to tell the truth about them, and we have to honor that." Ethan nodded, looking back at the horse. "It's more than we imagined. Every artifact, every carving, every object, it's all deliberate. Whoever created this intended for someone like us to find it, to understand it. But it's so complex. The message, I'm not sure we fully grasp it yet." The team spent the morning photographing and documenting every inch of the horse, from the smallest carvings to the arrangement of the human figures. High-resolution cameras captured textures and colors that had survived underwater, while 3D scanners created detailed models of the interior. Each detail was scrutinized, measured, and recorded. The goal was not just to preserve the horse, but to preserve its story, the story of people, culture, and intent hidden beneath the waves. Journalists crowded around, asking questions, cameras rolling, but Ethan and Clara insisted on maintaining control over the information. "We can't rush this," Ethan said firmly. "The world will see this soon enough, but we need to understand it before we make claims. There's so much here that could be misinterpreted." As the day progressed, the team began analyzing the objects found with the human forms. Small tools, fragments of pottery, ceremonial items, and textiles were examined under microscopes. The materials suggested a blend of cultures and periods, some familiar, others entirely unknown. It was as if the creators had deliberately incorporated elements from different traditions, creating a composite that was both historical and symbolic. Clara studied the textiles closely, noting the weaving patterns and dyes. "These aren't from one region," she said thoughtfully. "Some of this seems Mediterranean, some North African, and some patterns I haven't seen anywhere before. Whoever made this, they were sending a message that transcended geography. They wanted it to be understood universally, or at least by someone very clever." Marco, meanwhile, focused on the structure of the horse itself. "The design is brilliant," he said. "It's not just a container, it's a preservation system. The compartments, the reinforcement, the way it's balanced, this was built to survive centuries underwater without falling apart. Whoever made this knew exactly what they were doing." The afternoon brought a new layer of intrigue. The team discovered that some of the carvings and objects inside the horse were aligned in a pattern that suggested a sequence, almost like a story or a ritual. Ethan and Clara spent hours mapping the arrangement, noting the positions of the human figures, the placement of ceremonial items, and the carvings on the inner walls. The pattern was deliberate, a silent narrative that had been preserved in the most extraordinary way. "It's almost like a timeline," Clara said finally, leaning back from her notes. "Each figure, each object, it's telling a story. We need to decode it carefully. This isn't just a ritual burial, it's a message. Someone wanted us to understand their story." Ethan felt a chill. The realization was profound. This horse was not only a vessel of the past, but a bridge to the present, connecting lives long gone to the people who had found them. The human forms, the artifacts, the carvings, they were all part of a carefully constructed legacy, a deliberate act of communication across centuries. As evening fell, the world outside began to take notice. News broadcasts, satellite feeds, and social media carried images of the horse and its contents. The reaction was immediate: fascination, wonder, and awe mixed with disbelief. Historians debated its origins, archaeologists speculated on the cultural significance, and the public was captivated by the story of a Trojan horse that had survived underwater, holding secrets no one had expected. The team on the Odyssey remained focused, working late into the night under artificial lights. They cataloged every artifact, photographed every angle, and began preliminary interpretations of the carvings. The work was exhausting, both physically and emotionally, but the team knew that every detail mattered. Ethan sat quietly for a moment, watching the human figures arranged in silent communion. He felt a deep sense of respect for those who had been placed in the horse, and for the person or people who had designed it so carefully. Their intentions were clear: to preserve their memory, to communicate across time, and to challenge those who found them to understand their story. Clara joined him, her expression solemn. "It's hard to process, isn't it?" she said. "We're looking at real people, not just artifacts. They trusted that someone would find this, that history would remember them accurately, and now it's our responsibility." Ethan nodded. "Yes, and I can't help but wonder, why here, why like this?" They could have chosen any form of preservation, any location. But this horse, underwater, it was deliberate. And the fact that it survived intact, it's almost like they planned for us specifically. Over the next few days, the team worked to prepare the horse and its contents for transport to a conservation lab. The process was delicate. Moving the human forms and artifacts required extreme care to prevent damage. The ship became a hub of meticulous preparation, with every action planned and executed with precision. During this time, researchers began to interpret the carvings and patterns more deeply. Some suggested that the symbols represented stages of life and death, a philosophy that celebrated both existence and legacy. Others proposed that the arrangement of the figures was meant to convey a ritual or ceremony, a moment frozen in time to teach future generations. The implications were staggering. This discovery challenged conventional understanding of cultural practices, preservation methods, and human intention. The world realized that history could hold secrets far more intricate and profound than previously imagined. The night before the horse was scheduled to leave the ship, Ethan walked the deck alone. The Mediterranean was calm, the waves softly lapping against the hull. The horse lay in the center, silent and dignified, its secrets carefully documented but still holding an air of mystery. Ethan felt a profound connection to the past, a sense that the people preserved inside were watching, acknowledging the care and respect given to their story. He thought about the journey ahead, transporting the horse, conserving its contents, interpreting its message. It would take months, perhaps years, to fully understand what they had uncovered. But even in this moment, the significance was undeniable. This was not just a discovery. It was a bridge between centuries, a message of humanity, culture, and preservation that had survived the tides and time itself. The following morning, as the conservation team prepared to transport the horse to the lab, journalists crowded the dock, cameras flashing and questions flying. Ethan, Clara, and Marco stood by, explaining the importance of careful preservation while avoiding sensationalism. "This isn't just a story for headlines," Ethan said firmly. "It's a story of people, of history, and of the care and respect required to understand them. Please honor that in your reporting." As the horse was lifted carefully onto transport vehicles, the crowd watched in awe. The careful planning, the meticulous preparation, and the extraordinary preservation had allowed them to safeguard this moment in history. The world, captivated by the story, followed every step with fascination. Even as the horse left the dock, Ethan couldn't shake a sense of wonder and unease. They had uncovered an incredible secret, but he knew that the full meaning of the horse's message would take time to reveal. What they had seen was only the beginning. The artifacts, carvings, and preserved human forms were a puzzle, a story deliberately designed to be discovered and interpreted by those who could understand its depth. Clara stood beside him, gazing at the transport vehicle. "Whatever happens next," she said softly, "we've done our best. We've honored their story, preserved their message, and given the world a glimpse of something extraordinary. And I think, when people understand what this horse truly represents, it will change everything." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight and responsibility of the discovery. He looked back at the sea, imagining the horse resting quietly on the deck, its secrets slowly being revealed to the world. Somewhere deep inside, he felt the presence of the people it had preserved, their message finally reaching those who were ready to understand. The horse, once hidden beneath the Mediterranean waves, had emerged into the light of the modern world. Its story, carefully constructed and meticulously preserved, had survived centuries to challenge, inspire, and educate. And as the world watched and waited for the full story to unfold, everyone would come to understand the remarkable truth: that history is not just about the past, but about the connections it creates, the lessons it imparts, and the mysteries it preserves for those who are willing to seek them. Even as the sun set on the dock, casting long shadows over the deck, one thing was certain: the discovery of the Trojan horse had left an indelible mark on history. It was a story of patience, ingenuity, and the enduring human desire to communicate across time. And though the horse had revealed its contents, its deeper mysteries, the intentions, the philosophy, the story behind every detail would continue to captivate the world for generations to come.